Bam. All right, we're back and we're live. So let me introduce the next guest. Her name is Georgette. So Georgette's journey into healing arts began in an unlikely place as a financial analyst for Cirque du Soleil. Despite finding the accepted formulas for success by getting her master's and entering the corporate world, Georgette felt lost and unfulfilled. This longing and the series of serendipitous events led her to her current passion as a meditation guide, energy healer, and spiritual life coach. Georgette is a certified emotional coach practitioner with the mission to be the source of healing that inspires and educates her clients on how to connect with their inner potential and ability to create abundant, healthy, and happy lives. Georgette has a holistic approach to coaching utilizing the emotion code, her knowledge of chakras, intuitive tarot reading, and fear reprogramming to assist her clients in gaining deeper insights into their internal lives. So, without a doubt, let me invite Georgette.
Hi, brother.
Yo, what up, sis? So far we're what I think 8 episodes in, and I've managed to stumble on everybody's intro. So I'm keeping.
You did a great job. You did a great job. Honestly, I'm like, I couldn't have done it better myself.
So that was the brief introduction. That was what's written on paper. Now you tell me about yourself that's not written on paper.
Oh, wow. Where do I start? All right. So first of all, like to give you a bit of context, I grew up in Mexico, even though I've been living in Montreal, Canada for a little over 6 years now. And the reason I moved here was to pursue my MBA, my master's degree. I got admitted at McGill in 2013. Mm-hmm. So that's when I left everything known and familiar and comforting just to fly, into the unknown. So that's what brought me here. And, looking back at my life, I always question, where did this drive come from, right? To leave everything familiar, to look for a better life abroad. Mm-hmm. And why in academia? Like, why was the academic path? Like, why a master's degree? Why not come here as an entrepreneur or a worker or something like that? And I can tell you that it started when I was 8 years old. I come from a family where we never lacked anything. Thank God we were well off. But my parents got divorced when I was 8, almost 9. Mm-hmm. And my father walked out on us. So that, looking back, I think marked my life. And it made me have this drive to always strive for more. Because I don't know, but I remember when I was 8, 9, I was learning the multiplying tables at school, and I was learning how to read in English. And when I listened to my parents argue, I found that studies and books is the pain from listening to their arguments behind closed doors. And I think in books, I found a refuge. And I think that from there, I developed this persona, I became the smart one in the family. I became the one that always had good grades. And, oh yeah, Georgette, like she's the nerd. Georgette, she's the straight A student. Georgette, she's the achiever. Georgette, she's this, she's that. So I started labeling, putting these labels. And it's instilled in me, this drive of being a good student, because I remember when I grew up, well, I don't remember this specific episode, but my mom told me that I told her once that I would take care of her and my sister. So I have a younger sister, so it's only the two of us. So only God knows what went through that 8, 9-year-old mind when she saw her mom worrying about finances and about, how she would provide for two kids, two girls on her own, that internalized, that this drive was internalized in me. And the way that I thought I would contribute to that is if I excelled at school, if I became a good student because I got scholarships, so that way I could help my mom put me through school and easing the burden on that. And so that path became very clear to me since my parents divorced, and I only recognize that pattern now that I'm an adult and that I went through all these things. But I really wanted to mention that because I think it sets the background for where I come from. So this is what really drove me to look outside of my home country for new opportunities. Yeah. That's how I immigrated.
Well, I find it really interesting because everybody's story, it's like, well, your father walked out on you and then you were labeled a lot of things. And then while there were arguments, you were studying. And a lot of these things can actually destroy a person, break down a person, make a person a victim. I know that individuals that study during arguments, it could wire the brain thinking that studying equals arguments. So they actually put down the books because they don't want to study because they remember a painful time. And then being the smart one and being this and this, it's like living up to expectations of others and the images and the battles that we actually have to deal with it as well. And what I find really interesting, and I know we'll go into this a little further, is you decided to use those more as stepping stones than as a weight that was drowning you in water. So, yeah, tell me more. When did this happen? Why? How did you use it as more of a source of inspiration? And was there an awakening moment, a moment that shifted for you?
Yeah, I think in my early adult life, it did serve as a stepping stone for sure, because it was a passport for me to have access to more opportunities in this country. You know, like looking back, I found myself that I felt a little restrained in terms of opportunity in my home country, not only career advancement, but also I didn't feel safe as a woman. I lived in Mexico City for 4 years before I moved here. I'm not originally from Mexico City. So thank God nothing happened to me ever, but I did see a guy get robbed at gunpoint, 2 cars ahead of me. And that's the moment that I said, that's it, I'm leaving. I'm applying for a master's degree. I knew I wanted to do a master's degree, and I'm leaving, and I'm doing it in Canada. So for me, you know, like, it's twofold. Like, it's that idea of me looking for the sensible approach of finding a good job, you know, like, I before the master's, I had a bachelor's in economics, so it was the sensible thing to do. But to be honest, I never felt in full alignment with what I was doing, with what I was studying, not in any job I ever had. I worked as a financial regulator in Mexico, and it was never really my path. I knew it deep within, but I didn't want to admit it, you know, because I had already carved all this path for myself, growing up, being the one that always excelled, being the one that graduated, that got a job, that wasn't a burden for the family. And what would that imply for me, right? Like, to say, you know, like, I'm not really resonating with this. Maybe if I apply for a master's abroad, I will be able to finally find that dream job, that dream life, and at the same time be able to, you know, to provide for my mom in a way that I thought I wasn't going to be able to provide for her if I stayed. So really my awakening came when I started my master's degree here in Canada. And from day one, I didn't resonate with the rhythm of studies. I lived it in school practically. And during my second year of the master's degree, I got a part-time internship, also as a financial analyst. And it was also like the pattern repeating itself of stressing out and being busy all the time, not having enough time to take care of myself. When I was back in Mexico City, I was part of a swimming team. And I was competing, and I was training almost every day. I was very fit. I took care of my health. I took care of my body. So when I moved to Canada, that ended. So for me, it took a toll physically. And I felt tired. I started not paying attention to my diet, eating carbs, eating sugar, surviving on coffee. I didn't cook, but I had a priority, and my priority was to graduate. It was to fulfill all the requirements, because I feel if I didn't do that, then I wouldn't be able to stay in Canada. And one thing that was very clear to me since the moment I left Mexico was that I wanted to establish abroad. I didn't want to live in Mexico anymore, because I knew the opportunities were going to be more if I might immigrated. So the awakening for me, I think the first part really started when I finally pushed through the whole MBA program after 2 excruciating years. And before graduation, a month before graduation, I was supposed to find out if I got a full-time job offer at the internship place where I was working at. And my boss called me in his office, and he said, you know what, we don't have a full-time job offer for you. But you know what's funny? What happened is that my initial instinctive reaction was relief. For a split second, it was relief. And then after, the fear kicked in. It was like, okay, what are you going to do now? How are you going to support yourself? How are you going to go back to Mexico and tell your family that you don't have a job, but you're going to come back anyways? You know, like that you're going to stay in Canada regardless of you not having a job. So these questions started kicking in, and I said, you know what? I'll just take this time to relax. I'll pretend when they come, I go back to Mexico for a little holiday before graduation. I'll pretend nothing happened. I'll pretend I have a job. I pretend I won't tell them, and I'll figure it out. Like, this was the first part where I really tapped into this trust, even though a conscious awakening hadn't happened yet. And I think it was in part because I had started doing yoga, Bikram yoga, 6 months before, because of my mom. My mom saw how stressed I was during the masters, and then she encouraged me to start Bikram yoga in January 2015. And at first I was skeptical. I was like, Mom, what do you mean? Like, I don't need yoga. I need less working hours. Come on. You don't get it. You don't get it. I felt really misunderstood. But then I started doing the yoga, and I think that this started awakening something in me, which led me to this moment of trust, of saying, okay, I don't have a job, but I'll figure something out. So lo and behold, summer came in full-fledged. I looked for a job as a boss girl at a restaurant. I figured it out. I had a job. I worked as a babysitter. I worked as an interpreter. I worked as a tutor, as a translator. So I did many gigs, but that freedom that I experienced from that summer of 2015 until the end of the year, when I found the job at Cirque du Soleil, those 6 months were really a time for me to go back within, to start really asking myself what makes me happy. Even though I didn't have the answer of what made me happy, I knew what didn't make me happy. And what didn't make me happy was sacrificing my health and working at stressful environments. That was very clear. Although I didn't yet know what I wanted to do and what really ticked me, right? So, you know, at the end of those 6 months, I was running out of money. I really didn't have any more. I was living by the day, by paycheck. I didn't have more gigs coming in. And I wanted to apply for my permanent residence. And I remember I was coming out of the lawyer's office, and the total cost would be $5,000 with lawyer fees and government fees to get my residence. And I remember coming out of the office and thinking, God, like literally, I looked up and I said, God, where am I going to come up with $5,000 to pay for the lawyer? I don't have money. I don't have a full-time job. Like, what am I going to do? I swear, I grabbed my phone and I had an email from Cirque du Soleil for a position I had applied like maybe 2 months before, which was a senior financial analyst at their headquarter office in Montreal. And I said, wow, like this, they want to interview me like that day in 2 hours, within 2 hours. So I had 2 hours to prepare. Long story short, I got through 3 interviews and I landed the job. So it was just like, it fell on my lap when I needed it the most, right? I was just trusting and looking like, God, please help me, give me a sign. And then it landed on my lap. Well, but I worked for it. But then, I got the job. I was very happy. You know, I have nothing ill to say about Cirque du Soleil. It's a great company. It's doing great things. I worked there I can tell you, I was pretty happy for the first 2.5 years until that pattern of working, and not resting again, and having to sacrifice sometimes my yoga to work overtime started repeating itself. So I think that's when like my real awakening came. And I remember 2 episodes of this awakening. And one of them came in the fall of 2017 when the pace started picking up for me. And that's when I really started questioning whether this was really the path. Even though if it was a great company, I kept telling myself that I was making a difference by contributing to making these shows that made people happy. Even for 2 hours, they could forget about their troubles. Mm-hmm. I was questioning, is it really the path, you know? But I was just too tired. I remember I was just too tired. And then my way of coping at that time was going out every weekend and getting hammered. And and you know, what type of society do we live in where that is seen as normal, right? Where you use those coping mechanisms instead of asking yourself, why am I going out every weekend and getting wasted, you know? And then one of these weekends it freaked me out what happened, because I went out and I swear I don't remember how I came back home. I just woke up the next day. I had flashes here and there. I do remember telling someone I was with that night, like I broke down at the club and I told him, you don't understand how tired I am, but you don't understand how tired I am. I remember telling him that. That's the last memory I have of that night. The next thing I know, I woke up on my bed, fully dressed, boots on, my phone plugged, my door locked, my keys hang on its place. I live in a condo building with an elevator. I swear, Aaron, I don't remember pushing the button to go up the elevator. I don't remember opening the door, nothing. Mm-hmm. So that was like, really? That freaked me the hell out. I stayed out of clubs for over a year. I think that was the initial part. Like, okay, I cannot use alcohol as a coping mechanism anymore, because I got too freaked out. So I stopped going out. Mm-hmm. And so I started indulging food. I started using food as a compensation, as a coping mechanism for all these hours I was working overtime in the summer of 2018. Mm-hmm. So that came like about 8 months later. So I remember looking outside the window and seeing the sun going down and feeling this like kind of, how am I inside an office cubicle? And the sun is going down and I'm here and I can't enjoy the summer that it's so short in Montreal, and I'm here in this cubicle chained. I felt like a slave. I felt like I was, you know, like, I don't know, I felt trapped. And I kept telling myself, okay, if when I get out of the office, I'm going to go to my favorite restaurant and I'm going to indulge. And one of these nights I overindulged. I had a frame of diverticulitis, when your intestine gets really inflamed and food cannot pass through. So the doctor told me, if the antibiotics don't work, we might have to put you into surgery and cut part of your intestine. That's when the real awakening started, because I asked myself, how did you get yourself into this situation? You know, I was a pretty healthy person. I consider myself to be pretty healthy. I mean, like those late nights were over with alcohol, and on the weekends, those were gone. I practiced yoga almost every day. I had a pretty balanced diet, healthy diet, except for these indulgences that I had when I worked overtime. Nothing, I couldn't say I had an unhealthy lifestyle. And I started asking myself, why did you overeat? Well, I overeat because I don't like working overtime. And why don't you like working overtime? Well, because I don't like skipping yoga and doing something that doesn't spark joy anymore. Okay, what are you going to do about it? So that what are you going to do about it really forced me to face myself and say, okay, you're at this point. You've worked so hard for everything that you have to get to the point that you are now. Are you going to let that go? Are you ready and willing to let that go for something that you don't know what's going to be, but it's something that's going to open possibilities for you to actually be happy once and for all, you know? And I said, I choose the latter. I choose to let this go. I choose to walk deep into the rabbit hole and see what's really going on here and here. And I followed my intuition, and I started reading about spirituality, metaphysics, and the true awakening part came. And we talked about it a little bit before. I was watching one of David Icke's videos, and conspiracy aside, he said a phrase that really struck me. And the phrase was, we are spiritual beings living a temporary human experience. And I remember when I listened to him say that, I was washing dishes and I just looked around. I looked at the TV and something sparked. Yes, that resonates as true. Yes, we are spiritual beings and we're having a temporary human experience. And why am I in this I feel like a lab rat. Like, why am I in this rat race? Like a hamster running in a wheel and reliving the same day over and over in a loop. Like, go to, rush to work, go to yoga, go to bed. And it was the same day, every day. I was getting tired of that. And David put a name to what I was feeling inside. Yes, you are part of a reality that is dictated by conditioning, that is dictated by what society told you to be, that is dictated by what you are supposed to do if you don't take control of your consciousness, if you don't own your consciousness. And that's the moment where I realized, wow, like this goes way deep. I really need to work on myself, you know? So a lot of a mistake that most people make is that they want to change the system from outside in. And it's not like that. You have to start changing from within. And that's when I realized, you know what? I've been running so many dysfunctional, unhealthy patterns that I don't know where they come from, because at that point I wasn't fully aware of everything. But I'm willing to go there, even if it's scary, even if I'm going to be confronted with my own fears, demons, feelings and emotions that I suppressed since my dad walked out on us. I am willing to walk that path because it feels heavy and I can't carry these suitcases anymore. I'm willing to let them go. And that's when I started, you know, like, where do I start? Okay, physical detox because of all these indulgences. So I started Ayurveda, I started working on myself, journaling, meditation for the first time in my life, I started meditating. And I saw how that really helped lower my stress levels. And then I knew like the final one was the emotional one and the most difficult one, because not a lot of us are willing to really confront what is going on in our hearts. And I said, okay, what do I need? Like, where do I look? And that's how I found the emotion code, the modality that I'm certified in. It also fell on my lap, not by accident, I guess. I was just watching an interview with the doctor that channeled the modality, and it resonated, something ignited in me, and I said, I really need to look for a practitioner to work on me. And since day one, since the first session I had with my practitioner, he told me, you're a type A, you are a control freak, you are a warrior, you are like this. You don't have to be that person anymore. Your subconscious mind is ready to let that go. And that's when things started shifting faster, even faster, and led me to the path that I am today.
Awesome.
Oh my God, I felt like I went on, but I wanted to let you speak, but I needed to share all of this.
One, it's not about me, it's about you. And it's about you sharing your moment. And what I like is, while you were speaking, you talked about multiple awakening moments. A lot of times people think it's like this one moment where we awaken and then this halo comes around our head and we become this being of light. No, it's just things kind of break. Like the idea, what I mean by break is, as you were talking about, it's we're put into this world with constructs, black, white, female, male. You study this, you do this, this is your construct. This is the mold that you must live in. But yet it's like if you feel like you're a triangle and you're trying to go through a circle, it's not going to work. And then we question our worth and our value of, am I good enough? Am I not smart enough? What's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? And then you, like you did, burn the midnight hours to try and fit through the circle. But that was never you. But then you come to the idea of that, when you say things fell into your lap, you brought up a really good point. It didn't just fall into your lap and that was it. It's you put in years and years and years and years of work, consistently. And then it came and then it found you. But if you didn't consistently try to find ways to improve yourself, the life and everything you did, and actually start to listen more inside, these things won't happen, because we're constantly surrounded by signs and symbols and all this stuff. But if we're not truly attuned or aware to it, it doesn't happen. Even Cirque du Soleil could have been an evil email, be like, no, I'm not worth it. No, I'm not enough. Oh, I can't do this. This is not where I want to go. But you took it as a sign of, all right, let's take this step. Let's take this next moment. And then listening to TV, you know, hearing him say that, you could have just been like, oh, that doesn't make sense. But yet you let it resonate. Because a lot of times things resonate, but we're like, no, that sounds weird. No, people won't understand. No, maybe that's just crazy. But it's not. It's you. It's you. You're resonating with you. You're understanding you. And that you don't have to live within a construct, an idea. So, you know, I think it's amazing that you had an awakening and an awakening and an awakening and an awakening, and you're still going to have more and more awakenings and more awakenings and more awakenings. But what I like to ask you is, you were brought up with so many expectations, so many labels. When you went for those 6 months of working, and you were not living up to those labels because your parents thought that you were going to be in finance, but you were doing other things. Can you explain a little more of the thought process? What was going through your mind?
I only had one, like the first word that came to mind, freedom. The big F. Not the other F that I love too. Like, I curse a lot. But in a good way, just to express myself. But yeah, the word freedom, Aaron, it's like really my ultimate goal in life, to feel free. And that's how I felt that those 6 months, when I was not, you know, like I didn't have a boss I had to respond to. I had graduated already. I had my diploma in hand, and I had my work permit that I got after I graduated. I could stay in the country for 3 years until I became a citizen. So I was working. I was already moving towards the path that I wanted, that I had set for myself. So I said, okay, like those things are checked off the list. I'm making a living. It's not a luxurious living, but at least it gives me the time. And that's like a big breakthrough I had. It gives me the time to wake up whenever my body feels like waking up. I don't have to push it and force it to get up with an alarm and have it, like, you know, get breakfast, eat breakfast like at the speed of light, to catch the bus, to get to the metro, to get to work at 9. And well, in this case, like back in the day, I was a student, but I also was working at the internship. I don't have to rush anywhere. That's my point. I can decide when I go to yoga, what classes I want to take, at what time, swimming, hiking. It was a beautiful summer. It was like the first summer I could actually, you know, be there and climb up the mountain. We have the Mount Royal here in Montreal, that it's so beautiful. It has such a beautiful view. And just being outside, like being in nature. I remember one day I sat down at the square where I used to have lunch, where I was doing my internship. And I just sat down and I started looking at people, and they were passing by. They didn't even know I was there. They didn't even acknowledge my presence. They were just so focused, like, you know, horses with blinds. And you could see like the front, like this, walking around like that. And with this, like, this expression on their faces, like you could see the worry, you could feel the worry. And I remember looking up and looking at the sky so blue and say, thank God I'm not that person. Thank God I'm not. I could have gone through that path. I could have had the full-time job offered, and I would have taken it because it would have been easy. It would have been something sure, something certain. I could have taken that. And that could have been me right now. But instead, I am here. I am on the bench. I am soaking up the sun. And I looked up and I saw like this incredible tree full of leaves. I believe it was a maple tree. And the green, I never saw a green like that. It was the first time I was looking at a leaf and looking at the color and seeing it for a beauty that I had never seen before. So I think that was like also an awakening in itself, like being able to experience beauty in things, in simplicity for the first time. And that's what, that feeling that I had those 6 months, it was like a constant that I had for that summer until I started running out of money, and then like, fuck, I really need to make a living now. Right? But like my priority at the moment was just getting back in shape and taking care of my body and, you know, like unwinding from 2 years of constant stress. I started reading books that I had piled up. I love reading, like I'm a bookworm. So I had books piled up, and I said, I finally have time to read the books that I'm not going to be tested at. I finally have the time, and I started doing that. And it was like one of the most amazing times I've had in my life, apart from this one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I really do find that really beautiful. One, it's like you study, and that it's not, sorry, let me rephrase that. It's you read and you enjoy life and you bring in things, and then there's a test that you get the honor to do, versus, oh, there's a test, I need to study, and then you force yourself to do things that you don't. I fully agree with you when it comes to reading. Teachers told me, like, I didn't know I was dyslexic growing up. That's why reading out loud is such a challenge for me, but I love it because it's the only way I'm going to teach my brain to do it. And what it does, every time I finish a book, I put it on my shelf as a trophy, because I'm like, that's another book that somebody told me I couldn't read. And when it comes to the idea of people watching, you know, I like what you're saying. And anybody that's listening, I know you don't mean that you're judging other people, but you're judging you if you were in that situation. I used to do that in Beijing with my friend. We were in between jobs, and we would sit for a coffee and we would drink, and then we would see people going by, and we would create a story of like, okay, if I was that person and I continued my life this way, I feel like this way. And then we would write it. And then each person became another part of us, because everybody represents a certain aspect of us. And we would write these epic journals and being like, okay, so if I went for the business way, if I went for this way, if I went in makeup, like we created scenarios and stories for everything until we found out, well, what is the theme here? Yeah. Now I understand. So when you're looking at them, you've noticed that there was a theme. The theme was freedom. And that's your big F word.
That's my big F word. Freedom. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. You put it so beautifully. Yeah, it's exactly that. That was the theme in my story. And what character was Georgette not trying to become, but actually shedding? What persona? What avatar? Like really, this avatar, Georgette. Okay, right? How do you operate this avatar? You know, like I don't know, like what did she come here to do? You know, what did she came here to express?
Yeah.
What mission did she come here to fulfill?
It's well, I was at this talk a while ago, and this lady was using the word should in such a funny way. She's like, you get to the point where you look at yourself and you start shoulding all the shoulds that you've had in your life, and you start letting go. It's like you're shoulding everywhere. And I'm like, that makes sense, because you're like, well, you should do this, you should do that, and life should be like this. But then once you should all your shoulds, you feel so much lighter because you've shoulded everywhere, and you're like, oh, I feel better. I feel lighter now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's what happened to me. I was like, I started noticing this pattern. Whenever I went to a cocktail party or a social event where all my MBA peers were there, first thing you get asked, what do you do for a living? Where do you work? As if that was your worth was derived from that. And I know they are not ill intention. They don't mean any harm, but it's like the way we've been conditioned to think, right? And every time I told them, I work at Cirque du Soleil, oh, that's so cool. Like, oh, you must be so happy, or you must, like my happiness and my worth and my value was being derived from the place I was working at. Not because I was Georgette and I was there to contribute to, share my experiences and show them a good time and ask what they were feeling, thinking, or what ticked them. No, it was just like I was there and I was working for Cirque du Soleil, and that's what made me cool, and that's what made me respectable. So I was really getting tired of labels. And even now I'm like, yeah, I need to define myself in a way that people know how they can reach me and what I offer. But it's just me. And I'm no different in the sense that I have walked a path, and all of us have had our own challenges, and all of us are wounded in some way. And it's up to us to make, what do we make out of those life experiences, out of those circumstances, out of those wounds? Do we let those wounds define us, turn us into people who are ruthless, not compassionate, judgmental, or do we flip the coin and do a glitch in the matrix, and anchor new earth, and anchor a higher state of consciousness, and anchor heaven on earth, which is what I really came here to do, to be a guide, to be a source of a helping hand, a source of inspiration, a source of, like someone listening to my story and saying, wow, like I'm going through a similar situation in my life. Okay, there's a way out. Okay, nothing is like lost, I can get something out of this. So if I am able to do that with one person, then I'm doing a good job. Then I'm fulfilling my mission. Yeah.
I like it. And it's true. I feel like you're doing it with more than one person.
Thank you. Yeah.
So here's a question. As you're going from, as you said, one avatar to the next avatar, changing and going through this other path, what's your family saying? What are friends saying? What are you saying? Because I know that it's awesome that there's freedom, but I also know that there is self-talk sometimes, because we're going from the comfortable to the uncomfortable, and our body just wants to keep us safe. So it's like, you can't do this, meaning, please don't do this. Please don't. I want you to stay safe. But so tell me a little bit from family, your internal, like what went on, and how did you deal with it all?
Wow, that's a great question, Aaron. Great question, because the first thing I had to do was, for the first time in my life, really trust this inner compass, meaning my heart. And no matter what other people's opinions were, following the guidance and sticking to it I knew that things would be all right. And no matter the outside noise, you have no idea how many people told me, oh, but you're not going to quit your job, right? Like, you're not going to jump right into a full-time energy healing practice. Like, you're going to stay in your job. Tell me you're going to stay in your job. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I can't. Like, vibrationally, I don't resonate there. My energy is not there anymore. And if I did, I would feel so drained. I was already feeling drained. So if I'm supposed to work with energy, if I'm supposed to be a guide for others, I have to show up in my best self, as my best self. And what does my best self look like? It has become very clear to me. It became very clear to me from the past experiences I had. It's a person who shows up with a full night's rest, with a balanced, healthy diet, who has time to have a quiet breakfast, who has time to meditate, who has the first thing she does in the morning is her yoga. That's like a non-negotiable item. So if I can't do that, which I couldn't if I worked a full-time job, that would mean I would have had a couple of hours in the evening for sessions. Then where would I leave myself? There would be no time for myself. And that was like, no, that's not going to roll. So I need to really make this a full-time commitment. I'm my full-time commitment. And I need to be there 100% for my clients. I need to show up 100% for my clients, which means I have to leave. And a lot of people didn't understand that. My family started getting worried, and I was like, I understand where you're coming from. I know that you want me to be safe, but I know what I'm doing. Trust me on this. Trust me. Everything's going to work out, you know? There was no way they were going to change my mind. My banker, the guy that opened the bank account for my business, same thing. And that guy, like, he triggered me. I was like, no way, you're the last person I need to hear this from. I already heard it from my family. I already heard it from my friends. You're not going to tell me the same fucking thing. You need to encourage me, because I am here to open my business account, and you need to tell me that it's going to work out and that you're going to give me whatever it is I need to make this happen. I don't need to hear this shit from you. And then I was like, okay, breathe. You know, I opened my account. Everything worked out. And but I had to leave friendships behind who were not on the same path as me. And I know it can be hard. I know that and not a lot of people understand the path I'm walking. And I don't expect them to, because all of us have a different journey and we're at different stages in our journey. But at the same time, even if I don't expect them to understand and follow the same path, I don't need to wait for them. I don't need to stay there, because I have a course that I set for myself, and I have things to do, and I have people to serve, and I have things my soul wants to achieve. And it's all about, for me in my life right now, it's all about the mission. It's like, I don't know, it's like a very funny kind of Star Wars kind of thing. It's the mission. It's about the mission. It's not even about, like, I want to be there for my family, but like, my priorities right now is really reaching people, making an impact, making a difference, and be a guide, and be a light. And I cannot wait on people anymore. And it's fine. It's fine. I waited on myself for a long time to wake up. And I woke up, and now I want to be a guide for others who are also waking up. And when their time comes, I'm going to be there for them. I am. But it's just like, I can't stall my growth just to not make people uncomfortable, if you know what I mean. I cannot not express some views that I have, how I see the world, how I see consciousness, how I see my life, and talking about very like out there subjects like aliens, where we come from, our origins. I'm not going to shy away from that, because it's my truth and it's what I believe in. And I'm not going to talk about it, not to make people uncomfortable. Whoever resonates will just gravitate towards me, and I'll find my soul tribe, which I have in this past year. Like I shedded old friendships, but I found new people in the way. And by shedding old friendships, I made space in my life for incredible people like you to come in, you know, to share this path with me, who've already walked their own path as well, who already overcome their own struggles, and who have already, you know, like figure out what it is that they came here to do. And as long as I am aligned with this one, I know I'm on the right path. So I'm going to honor that. And I'm going to continue doing that.
So I have two more questions. Second last question would be, let me ask you within the question something else. When you were on the other path before, scholarship and studying academia, did you feel like you were on the right path at that moment?
That's a great question too. I did.
So
because,
here's my other question. So now that you're on this path, how do you know that this is the right one if you felt like the last one was the right one as well?
You know what? That's a good question, because in the past, during the time I was in academia, I knew it was the right path because somehow I knew it would be a stepping stone. Somehow, don't ask me how, but I knew that it had to be done. It would be the platform for me to like reach my ultimate mission. But it didn't feel peaceful in the way that I was always stressed. Like at school, I was never fully relaxed and enjoying the subjects I was learning. I was like, I need to study because I need to graduate and I need to find a job, right? And now it's in this path, I'm like so fascinated by everything. I always want to improve as a healer, I'm always, every spare time I have, I'm like watching videos on consciousness and following accounts on like around these topics, energy healing, consciousness. How can I show up better? Like, what other energy healing methods are out there? Like, what questions can I ask my client's subconscious mind for them to bring them a deeper healing? I started guiding meditations recently. In the past month, I started two groups, one in my yoga studio and one in my building. I'm not a certified meditation teacher. I was willing to show up and willing to see what would come out of that, and just to let myself be the vessel to channel whatever needs to come through me. God knows what person needs to hear a certain message at a specific day, and I just show up. That's the only thing I'm doing, showing up and allowing spirit to work through me. And so far in my meditation groups, I swear, Aaron, the meditations that I've been guiding and that I've been giving, people are telling me, wow, like that's what I needed to hear. And I honestly don't know where it's coming from. I'm just allowing myself to be as open as I can, as loving, coming from an open heart, from the most open heart I can come from. And that's how I am aligned. That's how I know.
What I like is you talk about, you went from I have to I want to. Yeah. It's almost like I have to complete this, and now that's completed, it's like now I can be that child. Now I can do the things that I more want to do. But yeah, you know what, life is hard, but it becomes easier if we do those hard things. But if we're constantly trying to focus on the easy things, life feels almost impossible for us. So I like how you used it as a stepping stone to get to where you are, and then to be playful and joyful. So my last question is, if you could speak to your younger self, what would you tell them?
Oh my God, so many things. But I guess the one that that stands out, you are enough. You are so enough. There's nothing missing. And I'm gonna get emotional. Yeah, you're beautiful. You are perfect in God's eyes. And there's nothing that, whatever story you're telling yourself, that you're not good enough. That's bullshit. That's complete bullshit. Don't believe that. Keep on, carry on. There's work to be done, for sure. But everything will be okay. Like, you'll hear the calling when it's time. Just keep doing what you're doing and don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself, please. Know that you're enough and don't be so hard on yourself. Enjoy life more. Let loose, enjoy. Don't take everything so seriously. I would say that to her. Yeah.
Nice words.
Yeah.
I bet you she's listening.
Yeah, she is. I'm sending that, yeah. Everything's happening at the same time,
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for you showing up to being the person that you are, for all that you do for yourself and for others, for your practices, for your gifts, your abilities, and all that you are. I just want to acknowledge you and say how wonderful and amazing of an individual that you are. And thank you for opening yourself up, being vulnerable, being open to everything. So I really do appreciate you. I acknowledge you and want to say thank you so much for you being you.
Thank you, Aaron. The feeling is so mutual. It's, this platform that you created, this space for us to share our stories. It's not a coincidence that we cross paths and that we, came with this initiative after the conversation we had, and it's just great. I've been learning so much from everyone too. And it's just incredible what you're doing. So I want to also acknowledge you for the work that you're doing, for your light, for how you're contributing, for how you're sharing, for how you're creating this for people to tap into and to, take whatever they need from this experience. And thank you, brother. I love you so much.
I love you too. I appreciate it. And you helped to inspire this whole idea anyways. It was through our conversation that were like awakening moments. Wait, that sounds a good idea. And then they're like, let's just do this all. And now we're what? We're in eight episodes or more. Like,
yeah, it's amazing.
It's just not going to stop. So I love it. There's too many people. There's too many stories, and there's just too much to be shared in this world. So before we go, where can people find you?
They can find me on my website, www.knowledgefromtheheart.com. This is my personal account, but I also have my business account, my Instagram account, Knowledge from the Heart. And I have a Facebook too, also Knowledge from the Heart, email info@knowledgefromtheheart.com. So it's all about the heart. And even like you can see, I have my heart here. Yeah, it's all about heart now for me. It's just like following that infinite guidance and infinitely intelligent guidance. That's your heart. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And we'll probably do this again in the future.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's not over. You're not getting rid of me that easy.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, sister. I appreciate you.
Me too. Namaste, brother.
We'll talk soon.
We'll talk. Bye.
Bye.